Hello and welcome to this new episode. This is a special one because we have a very special and dear guest in our episode today, and her name is Christine Sofiane Katzenmaier. She is a fellow singer that I met at a conference a few months ago, and she reached out to me, she grabbed me and she said, "Maggie, I'm a singer, you're a singer, we need to connect." And I was like, yes! And so we started having a conversation around singing, and I thought, well, this is too interesting to not share with you, because obviously anything around singing from different like voice professionals is interesting. I always say to singers that I work with, if you can work with different kinds of coaches, speech therapists, any voice professional, it's always interesting because you're learning their perspective. And that's really what today's conversation is all about. Now, let me introduce you to Christine because she has an incredible bio. Christine is a licensed speech pathologist, vocal health and performance coach, and a trained opera singer. Yes, she's the owner of Speech and Voice Works, and Christine obtained a Master of Science degree in Communication Science and Disorders with distinction from California State University. That is a huge list, and she really helps the people that she works with to transform their lives by finding their voice, by regaining vocal strength and stamina and the confidence that they need to succeed. And she works with speakers and singers, which again makes it really interesting to hear, like from her perspective, how she approaches things. So we talked about many different things, like how your speaking voice can affect your singing voice. We talked about vocal rest and vocal hygiene. We talked about the science behind singing and what actually creates confidence in your voice. And what I really enjoyed learning more about was this idea of the vagus nerve being connected to our head and our heart, and how that influences emotions and the voice, and how that can help to perform and sing in public without feeling those nerves and stress and doubts and anxiety. So it's a packed episode. If you have any pen and paper, get ready to take notes because it's worth it. And so without further ado, here's my conversation with Christine. I'm here with Christine. Christine, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I know we connected at a conference together and you reached out to me. You said, "I'm a voice professional as well. We need to talk." And I think that's how we got the ball rolling to have you here on the podcast. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited that we're doing this. So this is fun.
Yeah. So obviously I shared a little bit about you in our intro so that our listeners kind of know who you are. But do you want to tell your story from your own perspective? Like, what brings you here? How do you work with people? How do you help them?
So, I'm going to give you an abbreviated version how I got here. But for me, singing has always been my passion. Like growing up, I sang in a church choir and so forth. And then singing was always my passion. And then I became an opera singer, started performing, and then that led me into teaching. And from there, I realized some people, they have a hoarse voice, some people have a reduced singing range. Like, where does that come from? And I really didn't fully understand, even with all the training I had and so forth. And then a friend of a friend invited me to meet another friend who was a speech pathologist. I didn't even know what that was. And so then she told me, well, there's the science aspect of voice. And I'm like, well, that's what I do. That's what I want to learn about. And that's why I realized that's the missing link that I was looking for. So I went back to school, got my degree. And so now I help speakers and singers take their voice to the next level so they can succeed in their careers. And because of my singing background, but also speaking, and it's just, I love combining the artistry now with the science. And also for me, I have to say that was really the missing link for all those years. And I wish I knew had all that information way sooner. And now I'm happy that I can pass on that information to others because it makes it so much easier.
Yeah. And I mainly work with singers. So I'm very curious you work with speakers too, and I know one of the things we talked about is how your speaking voice affects your singing voice. It's one of the topics that you brought up earlier. So just for my own personal curiosity, tell me more about that.
Okay, so what happens when we think about singing? We're like, oh, that's right. When I do singing, I need to do something different. Very often we get very involved. Okay, now I'm singing, right? I get to get really involved. We know we think all of a sudden we start thinking about breathing and, oh, what is my voice doing? We're using the same instrument. The vocal folds still, they need to vibrate and they need to be happy. This is what they like to do in order to make sound. Now, whether we use that for speaking or singing, there's no difference. And it needs that breath support for the voice to just be steady and continuous. So, for example, if I talk like this all day long, okay, like glottal fry is a very common theme, okay, and some people, I'm not doing an extreme version of it right now, but let's say if you're talking glottal fry, if I talk like this longer, okay, if I continue talking like this, I don't think I would be able to talk to you the whole time on the podcast because it's even hard to listen to, right? I saw your reaction, like, what is she doing? So I'm giving an extreme example. What I was trying to demonstrate, when your voice just gets like really, when it's heavier in the throat and there's more effort in it, that translates directly into singing. Because if your instrument is already tired from how you're using in your speaking voice, it can affect your vocal range, for example. It can affect the sustainability of a song. Especially, if you sing, and then you know all about this, when you sing a song, is it going to be in the register and in the range that's really comfortable for your voice? Or are you, like when speaking, are you speaking up here when really your voice likes to sit here? Or you're trying to make a lower voice because to try to leave an impression, but really you're not speaking from where the voice likes to sit most comfortably.
Interesting. So I know I worked with singers who, before a performance, they have to be social with the people that are there to support them. So they're speaking. And depending on the context that they find themselves in, sometimes it's at their local cafe. And then oftentimes they tend to overdo their speaking voice before they go on to the singing part of things. So do you have any tips or insights or a technique that they can use to be mindful of how they're using their speaking voice before they actually have to use their singing voice, whether it's on stage or in the studio when recording anything? What is the link there?
So if they socialize, let's say especially before a concert, that's, I think that's still different than going to the choir rehearsal, for example, right? But regardless, if you have a singing engagement, let's say in the evening, give yourself a little rest, make sure you're hydrated, but also try to go to a noisy restaurant. Because then you start talking louder, and if we talk about projecting, that's a whole different topic, because I can project loud like this, but I can't project loud like this for a long time. So again, when we speak louder, we tend to use more force. Unless you know how to project the voice safely, that's what makes the difference. So my suggestion would be, if you have a social gathering, see that it's a more quiet setting, be closer to the person that you're talking to. And the other thing, if you're a social butterfly over the phone and whatnot, use headsets instead of speakerphone. Because if the phone is further away, the microphone picks it up the same way. But perceptually, we think, we need to speak louder because now I'm speakerphone, but actually we don't have to. But again, we use more force than we actually need to. So those are things that, those are simple tricks that will make a huge difference. Yeah.
Yes, I always do the speakerphone thing, and I notice myself going louder when I do. So I'm taking that with me.
Again, like I said, the microphone on the phone picks it up the same way, but perception, the brain thinks, this thing is further away, you gotta talk louder. The moment we go louder, again, you can project safely, but if you're not used to that, you just use more effort on the voice than you actually need, because it's really about, vocal health is really about just maintaining, healthy habits.
Yeah. So healthy habits, I know I've talked about it on the podcast already, and I got my perspective, but I would love to hear your perspective. I also saw on your Instagram a few posts around vocal rest. what are your thoughts on vocal health and then vocal rest? That is obviously one main topic within that.
Yes, yes. So vocal health, I mean, that's why I also created the vocal rescue guide, because there's some basic things and the common mistakes or pitfalls that people don't realize that they're doing that actually can affect the voice. One is hydration. Staying hydrated is really, really essential. I know you talk about that a lot as well. And let me just be clear, coffee is not hydration, okay? It stimulates you, but for a longer time, like, no, it's liquid, but okay, let's talk about water, okay? Just to be clear about hydration, I'm talking about water, okay? And then resting your body. You gotta sleep, because you know what? If your body is tired, your voice is gonna be tired. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to have your 8 hours full solid sleep every day, otherwise you can't function. That's not what I'm saying. But keeping that in mind, that resting your body is just as important, because again, the instrument is inside of us. So we got it. And with the voice, it's everything it's all connected together. So it's not just when you play the piano, you can sit down and move your fingers over the keys. With the voice, it's inside of us, so there's other components that affect it. So just, for example, sleep is really important. And then habits like clearing your throat, for example, or coughing, or shouting, screaming. Oh, I know people love go to concerts and whatnot and just scream on top of their lungs. Well, you can actually injure vocal folds with one single scream. So, and I bring this up to people because I know it's super fun and whatnot, but you can really injure your vocal folds, and it's really important to just be careful with that. And then resting. Do I recommend resting at times? Yes, I do. However, resting your voice is not the solution to the problem. And it's a pet peeve of mine, because I feel very strong. The reason why I want to bring this message across, because what resting does, again, it lets the vocal folds rest and just get a break, just like our body. That's why we need sleep at night. What it doesn't do, change the habit how we use the voice. Because why is your voice getting tired in the first place? Is it a lack of breath support? Is it technique? Is there an underlying issue? It could be reflux. I mean, it's the inflammation of the vocal folds. And so that's why rest alone will not solve the problem. And like in voice transformation, I talk about all the different steps that are involved to maintain a healthy voice, which includes, the technique, breathing, but also awareness, and really, how does the voice really work? And I know you talk a lot about that as well. Understanding the instrument makes a huge, huge difference, not just in voice care in itself, but also it affects your confidence, because now you have control over how you use your voice, because you have a better understanding. And so that's why resting alone is a Band-Aid solution. Do I recommend rest at times? Absolutely. Do I rest my voice? Yes. However, again, why does the voice get tired? Why does it sound scratchy at times? Why does it get hoarse? If that's the case, something else is going on, and that's what we need to address. And like yourself, as you talk about, because people think, oh, I start singing for a little bit and it's okay to get a little tired or I get a little hoarse. It's very common, but it's not supposed to happen. I know
it's not. We're on the same page here.
I know.
I recently talked to a singer, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, because you know the science behind it.
Yeah.
So maybe I didn't tell you this, but I actually had vocal surgery 2 years ago, 3 maybe already. They removed a cyst from my voice that was something that was growing genetically, apparently. So anyway, after the surgery, oftentimes people would tell me, oh, so you're not allowed to speak for like 10 days. I'm like, no, actually, after 2 to 3 days, I was starting my vocal exercises back up with my speech therapist. And now, so moving forward, so throughout that process, I've learned that vocal rest is not just about silencing the voice. It's about using tools like those straws and SOVT exercises to let that blood flow, all those things.
Correct.
And that really helped me in my recovery. So now, moving back to today, a few days ago, I talked to a singer and she said, oh, I'm feeling a little bit hoarse and tense. Next week, I'm going to silence my voice for 7 days straight. And I'm like, that might not be the best thing to do. I would love to hear the science behind it and your thoughts as a speech pathologist, like your perspective on those kind of things.
So again, the vocal folds, it's all about the two little bands inside our throat. They're about 1 centimeter long, right? Very delicate tissue, but extremely powerful, and they have quite a bit of endurance as well. Their job is to do this basically, to vibrate and go together, right? And they want to go together gently. If your voice gets hoarse, very often there's some nodules that might develop. So when you slam your cords together, let's say if in your technique you're just pushing really hard when you're singing, or even when you're talking, you might be straining when you're talking, right? So that means they don't have the gentle flow together, they're actually slamming together. Over time, they can either develop some nodules, which is almost like a calluses and leads to stiffness of the vocal folds. And with that impacts then the quality of the sound, and then that can lead to fatigue where you feel tired. So if you tell me, okay, rest now for 7 days because your voice feels a little tired, so I'm just going to rest my voice, right? Okay, I'm going to rest my voice. Are they going to recover? Yeah, to some degree. Are nodules, if let's say there are nodules on there, right? Are they going to disappear just from 7 days of voice rest? No. Can they go down with voice therapy and some, vocal exercises? Absolutely, yes. So now I go use my voice again, and again I do this, where I'm just slamming it together. So guess what? A week later, I'm going to go on voice rest again for 7 days. Not only does that majorly affect your lifestyle, and because people don't realize how important a voice is until they lose it or have a problem with it. And so that's what we want to prevent. And then the other part is like, you rested your voice, but nothing changed. It's like you go running, but you wear the wrong pair of sneakers and they're kind of tight and your toe is starting to push in. It's almost like your nails cutting to top off from it, right? And then you're like, I'm going to take a break from running for a week, but then I'm going to put the same shoes back on and keep running.
Yeah.
That's why, again, voice rest, I feel very strongly about those kind of things. So yes, because I just feel like this information needs to get out there. People need to understand.
I totally agree. And I even think but that's my personal opinion. I would love to hear yours as well. Silencing the voice for 7 days straight, it's like if you break your arm and you're in a cast for a certain amount of weeks and you're not using that muscle will become weaker. And so if you're not using your voice for 7 days or 14 days, that influences the vocal muscles too, right?
It does. However, with that said, it depends on what type of injury there is or what type of if there is a surgery on the vocal fold, sometimes it can be up to 7 days. Just so it really depends on, the impact and on so forth, how much of the vocal folds were affected. But in general, you're absolutely right. That's why, for example, the straw phonation, there's studies that show if you just rest your voice versus do the straw glides, you have a quicker recovery from it. So scientifically, it actually heals on a cellular level on the vocal folds. And it relaxes the inside of the throat and just, resets the voice. That's why those exercises are so super helpful. That's why, like the straw, that can be your daily companion. Yeah.
Yes.
You don't need that just when you're not feeling well. You just use that as, it's like a stretch for the voice is what it is.
Yeah. Nice. So now that we're diving deeper into the science, I know that we both talk about confidence and using our voice with confidence. I obviously have my approach. I would love to hear your approach. How do you help your speakers and singers to cultivate confidence when using their voices?
That's a great question. I help them in the sense what I've learned over time and working with the people that I help. And I have to say it was my own experience as well. Once you understand how the voice really works and getting those tools into your toolbox, it's very easy to move forward because people come to me because they struggle with their voice, or their voice might be fine, but they just don't feel confident about it. And it's in most cases because they don't fully understand how the voice really works. And so when you don't feel confident, then you don't know where to start. Because if you have a plan and you know what to do, okay, if this comes up, then I can do that. If I feel tired, then I can do this. If I have a trouble getting through the higher range to sing those high notes, I can do these scales. Now this is working. And then because when you have those tools in your toolkit, that gives you confidence because all of a sudden you feel like you're in control. And it all starts with awareness. And then understanding how the voice really works, the whole mechanism, what's connected. From there, identifying what the cause of the problem is, and then eliminating triggers, and then building a sustainable voice. And that's what I do in voice transformation. We go through those steps, and that's how people get the results, and that's what gives them the confidence, because all of a sudden they realize, I had no idea that I could do this. And also the other thing is, people always think it takes them so much longer, and it's like a long process, and it's really complicated. It really isn't. I mean, within 6 weeks, you can just reset your voice entirely. And just having that, you can go on afterwards and build on that, but just to have the full basic understanding and make some major changes. And to me, that's what it's about. And I've seen it so many times. And to watch people go from, I don't know what to do, I'm devastated, my voice is just not holding up, I have to give talks, I have performances all the time, my voice is not pulling through with it, and I get stressed over it each time. And we know how stress affects the voice. So there's a psychological component of the stress level, but also really just feeling helpless and not knowing how the voice is going to perform. Or even if you want to, have more impact in your social life, go to a restaurant and you're not able to converse with your friends because it's too loud and your voice is not loud enough to do that. And then knowing how you can actually, what the things you can do, they're very tangible and they can be implemented very easily. Once you have the understanding of that, it's like, like the curtain comes off. It's like, that's how those pieces of the puzzle go together. Well, okay, that was fairly easy, and that's pretty cool. And what I love, just to see that transformation in people. And that to me is extremely powerful, and that's where the confidence comes in, you know? I mean, I love it. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that beautifully sums up why we do what we do to help people with that.
And just, see the reaction. Let's say if I work with a singer and then she's like, I have trouble with my higher range. And then we go through some exercise and do some scales. And all of a sudden they're like, I just did it. And I'm like, yeah. Or then see, I was recently working with a sales director. He's leading a huge team, but he wasn't happy with his voice. He had more like a nasally sound. He just felt he wasn't perceived as the person who he really is, right? Well, we worked on his voice, and then he just sounded very different. Honestly, he was like 2 inches taller when he walked out. And just to see just the whole posture change, you know what I mean? I just love it. It's just the things that we can give people, so they have those tools. I think it's fantastic, because that's really what it's about. That makes me super happy.
And it influences as well all the other aspects in your life, right? With the example 100%. You just gave. Yeah, it influences his work. I believe that singing also influences the relationship with the people around you. Because if you're feeling happy and confident about yourself, you get to pass that on to the people around you and be, their inspiration. It's the ripple effects. It's such beautiful work we get to do.
Absolutely. And the social aspect, again, that translates directly into it, whether that's for singers or speakers, because it really comes down to the core. And I think a part of that is also because the instrument is inside of us. We're so connected. So once we feel more confident, better about it, it has, like you said, it has that ripple effect and goes across the board.
And isn't it interesting how, because the instrument is inside us, when we are using it, it's twofold, right? In the sense that we want to feel confident, but it's because the instrument is inside of us that we're feeling naked when we're singing on stage, or we're feeling so vulnerable sharing this voice because it's a part of us, compared to a piano or guitar is an instrument that is separate from us.
Correct.
We are still the ones playing the guitar or playing the piano, but with the voice, it's a part of us that we're letting be heard. Does that make sense what I'm saying? I find that a little bit mind-blowing, and I think that's why so many people struggle with that confidence part.
Absolutely. And again, that's the confident part, but also then understanding how the emotions are directly connected to the voice. And then when you have a performance, instead of fighting those nerves, first of all, being aware that those nerves do come on, and instead of fighting them, embracing them, and then using some strategies to calm those nerves. But also you want to have them there, because releases the endorphins, and that gives you the push to do things, right? And just knowing that even when they're there, you can still sing the way you want to.
So let's talk about emotions, because that is one thing that tends to come over and over and over again in our communities of singers. And that is, how can I sing without the emotions taking over? So I think we've all had the experience of singing a very emotional song and feeling that tightness in the throat because you might feel the tears swelling up in your eyes. And in that moment, emotion is taking over. So many singers that I work with, they ask themselves the question, how can I avoid that? And how can I handle those kinds of moments? I would love to hear your thoughts on how you approach that.
So I think that's when being prepared comes in, because as a singer, you want to have those emotions, and something, and that's the fine line. Yes, we want to bring the emotions, but just enough so we can feel it, but not too much so the voice doesn't break. Because again, what happens if you get too emotional, the airflow stops, and that's why the voice stops, and that's why we hear those cracks when it happens. And I remember I was just to start to perform, and then I said to her, she was like a well-established opera singer, and I said to her, I'm feeling nervous. And she said, why are you nervous? Like, I don't know, it's new. She's like, you know what, if you're prepared, you're not going to be nervous. And she was right. And there's definitely something to it, because if you are and I'm sure you do this with your students as well, like you have to, for one, be familiar with the song that you're doing, know what you're doing. So the technique comes before, you work on that, but once you have that technique, because we're talking muscle memory, that's why practicing a song is really important. Also, if you sing a song in a certain key, you want to find a key that works for you, and then stay in that key, because you're establishing the muscle memory for the vocal folds to move for that particular pitch, versus switching gears up and down. Like, no, you want to sing the song in the same key. So by practicing, you're establishing that muscle memory, so musically the voice knows what to do. Now, when the emotions then come in, that gives you then more freedom, because you don't have to think about the technique. And as you then practice the song, you then go further and further away from the technical aspect and just make it feel about the song, and then just do like your mock performances, but let the emotions come along with it, because that's what makes good singing. I mean, you want to connect with, if you connect to the material, the listener will connect to you.
Yeah, 100%. I would even say that sometimes, even when the emotions take over, that might be the thing that we connect with as a listener.
Absolutely.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Amazing. So tell me more about, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, because I know that was one of the things I was also curious about. The vagus nerve.
Yes.
Like, we can have a whole conversation about that.
Oh, yeah.
But what's your, like, maybe let's start out with, what is it and how does it help singers in their practice, in their performances, and speakers, because you also work with speakers. But tell me more about that, because that is something that I don't talk about that much. So I think my listeners would be very interested in that topic too.
So vagus nerve, we have vagus nerve stimulation. All of that is like a hot topic, right? I'm bringing it more from the vagus nerve is the main cranial nerve that innervates the larynx, our voice box. There is the superior laryngeal nerve and the recurrent laryngeal nerve. And the recurrent actually wraps around the heart, goes up, and then the superior actually goes up into the brain, and it connects directly to the emotional center in the brain. Which is why when we get nervous, it tenses up. When we get nervous, what happens? Breathing gets more shallow, where we go kind of in fight or flight mode. So breathing gets more shallow, the muscles get a little tenser, and with that, that's why when we have emotions, we hear it, it's reflected in our voice, because of that vagus nerve that is directly connected to the emotional center in the brain. And that's why it can be a challenge at times when we do get emotional to still convey or bring our message across or sing in the way that we want to. So because there is a direct correlation, it also takes away the blame of, I'm just too emotional, I don't know how to do it. There's a reason why that happened. It's like, that's physiology, right? That's anatomy. And just understanding that, okay, so what then can I do just to calm the nerves? And that's where breathing techniques and so forth come in. But that is why the emotions are conveyed through our voice because it's the main nerve that innervates the larynx that makes our voice function for breathing and for swallowing as well, but for producing sound. And at the same time, it sends it right to the emotional center and wraps around the heart as well. And so that's why it's such a delicate situation at times, because the emotions are directly connected to that nerve.
I love that scientific explanation. Thank you for sharing. See, when I work with singers, we do have tools. We have a whole, what I call the vocal trust library, where they have breathing exercises, meditation, visualizations, all those things to regulate their nervous system. And what singers oftentimes do is that they go into that vocal trust library right before their performance, when they're already in that panic zone, when really I'm an advocate of doing those exercises beforehand, so that you're also training yourself on regulating your nervous system, so that when you need it the most, you just grab the tools that work best for you, and then you're going to get into that calm state quicker than if you're already in that panic zone. So it's interesting to hear the science behind it. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing.
That's why, in the voice transformation, that's why I start with the foundation of the voice and how it's all connected. Because again, with the vagus nerve, for example, if you understand where that comes from and how it relates to each other, then it's all of a sudden you can take a step back. I'm like, oh, okay. Now I understand how it's connected. So it's not the feeling, because very often, I don't know how it is, what your experience is, but often people feel like something is wrong with them. No, it's not there's something wrong with them. That's just how the body works.
Yeah, wrong, or I just don't have the talent. What are your thoughts on the whole talent conversation?
Well, not good enough, I don't have the talent, or they were told they can't sing and they never touched it again. So it's really, there's where the mental block then comes in, which is unfortunate. And you know what, for some people, honestly, I mean, singing for some people is easier than for others. Some people need ear training if they have a hard time with referencing with pitch and so forth, or expanding on their vocal range. And again, I tell you, for me, I always wanted to be a full-on soprano. I end up being a mezzo. And I'm like, I want to be a soprano. Well, that's just physiologist. That's why some people are altos. But if you don't have that understanding, you're like, well, okay. But what's your experience with talent? Tell me more about that.
Oh, I don't believe in talent. I believe in training and training your voice in the right way. And as you said, some people are more inclined. Like some people, they sing on pitch from the get-go, and other people, they need to have that ear training and that internal hearing. So my belief is that everyone can learn to sing unless you're tone deaf. But I also believe that someone who's tone deaf wouldn't show any interest in music or singing. So the fact that people are even interested in wanting to sing means that they can learn to sing. That's my
absolutely
belief.
agree. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Singing and using your voice, that's the other thing. It all can be learned. So with voice, it just feels like it's also mystified that I don't know. It just seems like, oh, it's so hard. I don't know. It's like, I don't have the talent. Like, I almost don't even know where it comes from. But no, like you said, with voice, you can just learn it like any other instrument. You can learn to sing. You can learn to speak better. You can change your voice. I mean, I can talk like this if I wanted to, you can change your voice. You can increase your range. You can get a stronger voice if you've always had a soft voice. You can project, like all those things are available to you because it's just like learning an instrument. Same thing.
100%.
And I think, again, it comes back to because the instrument sits inside of us, so the whole body is involved with it, and that's why understanding how it all connects together.
Yeah.
So it's almost like just debunking those myths that, it can be a lot simpler than people think. Because I think a lot of people want it. Some people, they don't know that help is available. And others, they're like, I just don't know how to do this.
Yeah. And it's hard because with a piano, you can say, hit this key. With the voice, you cannot say, here's a C sharp. Like, it's a feeling, it's a sound. So that makes it more intimidated for some people.
Of course. Yep.
Yeah.
Same when I do voice training, they're like, where is it? So you got more by sensation than hearing it, right? And it's learning that trust. Allowing yourself to explore, because a lot of that is about exploring. What is your voice able to? And also then it becomes personal because you discover, oh, I have those sounds in me. Like, where did that come from? And getting familiar and comfortable with that.
Yeah. Christine, we can keep on talking.
Oh, I know.
So before we start wrapping up this episode and this conversation, is there, and before you share, well, you can share it now as well, where people can find you and stuff, but I want to hear from you first. Is there anything else that you feel like we still need to address that our listener have to hear before we wrap up the conversation?
I want to say, if you've ever had any doubts or not feel uncomfortable about your voice, and you've always had that desire to, you just want to sound better, you want to sing those songs, go for it, because all the tools are available. It's a lot easier than you think. All you have to do is get started.
Yeah.
That's really 100%. What it is. That's really all it is.
Mic drop moment. Amazing. So if people want to work with you, if they want to connect with you, if they want to learn more about you, obviously I will share the links in the description here down below. But what would be the best place to reach out and find you here?
They can find me on Instagram at Empowered Voice Coach, and or on my website, speechandvoiceworks.com.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I'll include those links in the description so that people
Great. Thank you so much. And if anybody wants to start with their voice, with the vocal rescue, I have a free download that's available, and they can just get started with that and just learn about the basics and how to just take away some of those common misconceptions. Easy steps to start with. Yeah.
I'll include that link as well to your free download. Vocal rescue is what you call it?
The vocal rescue guide.
I love it. Okay, yes. Amazing. Yes. Thanks for sharing that. Thank you for gifting
Thank you so much, Maggie.
Our singers. Yeah, I appreciate you so much.
Likewise. This was so much fun. We can go on and on about this.
I know. And I feel like our thoughts on singing are very similar. So I
very much so. Yes. Yeah. And I just love sharing that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for taking the time, for being here, and for having this conversation, and for recording it for our listeners. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honor. Thank you.